First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rakal Kadash, double honors and elders apostles of Great Millstone who teach this truth and sincerity, and a shout out to Yakim that's out there on the four quarters of the earth. Well, it looks like actress Angelina Jolie, you know, the one that has been training the white helmets to stage events. Well, she's in Mosul, and so she, wants to, paint a pretty picture about how the United States is doing such a wonderful job in Iraq and Syria, liberating these places from ISIS when really they fund and they train ISIS, But she wants to paint a different picture because, after all, you could trust Angelina Jolie, right? She's one of your favorite actresses, right? We laugh in the face of Esau Edom because it's like, nice try, bitch, but, you can't fool the elect. So anyways, let's take a look at this video. Worst devastation she ever seen. That's hilarious because you're the terrorists that put them there, that trained them.
Before there was like a small munition.
This is the worst devastation I've seen in all my years with UNHCR. These people have lost everything.
Well, thanks to your funding of terrorists, right? Because you want to overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad. Fuck this bitch. Anyways, just going to show that how hypocritical the whore Babylon the Great is.
Rubble with their bare hands, and their bodies in this rubble. Let's stay here.
Oh, do a tear for me. Please do a tear for me, right? Make me feel about this, that we're doing such a great job in Syria and Iraq, right?
And there's unexploded ordnance. And yet they are so happy because the last Eid, they were under occupation and suffering. And
oh, United States did such a good job, right? Bullshit. You're the terrorists. But if you read all the sewer stream media, worst devastation I've ever seen. Angelina Jolie visits a Mosul year after liberation from ISIS because the United States is doing such a good job, right? Angelina Jolie visited West Mosul on Saturday during the Muslim holiday of Al-Fitr, which marks the end of Ramadan. Her visit to what was recently a war-torn city, a year after Mosul was liberated from 3 years of ISIS control. Yes, because when Bashar al-Assad was reelected by the people, the United States, the whore, Babylon the Great, of course, wanted to, overthrow the government. So what did they do? They created this new terror group, which is really Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra front, and they just molded them together and just called it ISIS. They needed a new name. So anyhow, they just wanted to sell you the bullshit that America liberated this devastated, war-torn city, right? According to Time. Just like everything else. No, I never subscribe to Time because I know who runs it. Amalek. Esau. Russia officially warns United Snakes, the whore, Babylon the Great, not to take tough measures against the Syrian Arab army in southwest Syria, because, of course, we know that they're about to stage a false flag chemical attack so that way the United States can intervene for the terror groups. The deputy chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Zhepov, was quoted as saying on Friday that the United Snakes military should not take tough measures against the Syrian Arab army in southwest Syria. As quoted by the RBC news agency, Zhepov warned the United Snakes from using tough measures against the Syrian Arab army, stresses that this is totally unacceptable behavior by the United Snakes military. Babylonians have resorted to this practice before. I hope that there will be no unpredictable action against the Syrian Arab army. In any case, it is necessary to avoid the confrontation, the Russian official had said. Yeah, but we know that they're getting ready to stage a chemical weapons attack, so let's take a look at that video, shall we?
Book Sam, welcome to Alternative Media Television. This is AMTV Live. We're going to go for a full hour. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. As always, we're going to have a robust discussion. Please leave your opinions, your comments, and I'll probably go to some questions or some shout-outs later in the show. I am backed up by John and Alex. These are our fearless producers who absolutely make what we do here possible. And they are absolutely manning the ship. So we're going to have a smooth sails through the waters. Now, we are discussing something very important at a time when obviously all the attention is focused on Singapore. Russia has warned that an imminent chemical attack, false flag, is basically going to happen in Syria, that it is imminent. Now, the foreign minister, the Russian Defense Ministry has warned that such a scenario is going to occur, saying that a serious provocation aimed at justifying a new round of Western coalition missile attacks against Syrian government bases and facilities. Now, why would they say this, and what are they saying? Now, I'm going to connect the dot for you on one aspect of this that is very important. But before I go into that, why would this occur? Because Bashar al-Assad, and the acknowledgement from the mainstream media as well, they've won the war. Russia, Bashar al-Assad's government, Iran, they have won the war. They are basically finishing securing territory around Damascus. That's why they had a little deal with Israel to make sure that Iranian forces aren't going to be there as they basically clear territory of these so-called rebels that have been funded by the United States. But we all know the radical Sunni ISIS extremists funded, by the deep state. We've known this for some time. So you have Bashar al-Assad and the government basically clearing out the area. They almost won. So we see something occurring, though. We see that we are still in Syria. U.S. troops are still in Syria. The deep state is still in Syria. 22 million people displaced. Okay, and we have a situation where they, look, no matter what's going to happen, they view the Bashar al-Assad government as illegitimate. Okay, they view that the majority is Sunni and that there should be a Sunni-run government aligned with Saudi Arabia. Now, I'm going to get to something that what Jared Kushner is doing in just a moment, but again, Russia has basically warned the Bashar al-Assad government and put this out there in the media that an ill-timed and strategically nonsensical mass chemical attack on civilians, supposedly ordered by Assad, is on the table as a false flag attack to justify a new round of Western coalition missile attacks against the Syrian government bases and facilities.
And we know that Donald J. Trump will carry this out. So anyhow, that's reported there as AMTV, which I do look at those, with taking the meat, spitting out the bones, pretty much, is telling you what's about to take place, and it will, because we know who Donald J. Trump is, the face of Esau, the so-called white man. So anyhow, this is an older article, but this is how it began. The United States backs Syrian force holding hundreds of ISIS foreign fighters, and this is the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces. A day after CENTCOM's leaders said they should face persecution at home, Trump hints at Gitmo option. The top U.S. commander of forces in the Middle East, General Joseph Votel, predicted on Monday that hundreds of ISIS foreign fighters captured by the United States back Syrian forces, which is the terror group, Syrian Democratic Forces, because, it's not like that they've really captured anybody, but what they're doing, though, is they're putting on a show, would be sent back to their home countries for persecution. But on Tuesday, President Donald Trump said in the State of the Union address that he was working to keep the option to detain enemy combatants in military prisons instead of persecuting them in the criminal justice system. So what's happening now is the United States is trading Well, see, that's just it. And there's more. Syrian Democratic Forces in Syria have done a really good job of picking up foreign fighters. No, the Bashar al-Assad government has been doing a really good job at getting rid of these terrorists and has actually been releasing them to go back. So if anybody's negotiating, and actually doing a really good job, it's the Syrian Arab Army. But the United States, the whore, Babylon the Great, likes to take credit for things that they created. As they began to move and putting them into their detention so we could begin to look for a way to get back to their home countries for persecution, U.S. Central Command General Joseph Votel said Monday. But here's what's really going on from a Press TV article, video.
Back Syrian Democratic Forces in Syria have reportedly released Europeans captured allegedly fighting for Daesh terrorists back to the terrorist group itself. Now, according to the Daily Telegraph, the SDF agreed to exchange prisoners with the Takfiri group under secret exchange deals. The British Daily says French and German nationals were among those exchanged under the deals in 2018. It says the SDF has currently 3 British prisoners who could potentially be involved in future exchanges. SDF has captured several Daesh terrorists in recent months in Syria. Joining us out in New York now is Mr. Joe Lombardo from United National Anti-War Coalition. Hello, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. Your thoughts, SDF, American Friendly Forces, Friends of America, engaged in dealing with terrorists. Your thoughts, please.
Well, we've known they've been engaged in dealing with terrorists for a long time. The way the United States is fighting wars these days is by using proxies, proxy armies, and by using mercenaries. We've known for a long time that this is not a civil war, even though that's the narrative that comes from the news media in the United States, that this is a war on Syria from outside, and it includes people from, some estimates say, up to 80 different countries. So these people that were released was just a validation of that fact, and it's not some news that you will hear in the United States because the United States doesn't want to admit that.
But, there's a lot of people, a lot of critics that think that the ties between these terror groups and the SDF are a lot more sinister than even what this report suggests.
Well, I think they are. It seems like the U.S. has leaned more towards the al-Qaeda forces than the ISIS forces recently. And so that might be another indication of that. It's hard to determine what their tactics are because they don't tell us. But it is clear that they still have a regime change agenda for Syria, and they will use whatever forces from whatever countries or whatever way they can get people within Syria and from outside of Syria to fight their wars for them.
So what would your perspective be, your interpretation on what Washington's priority is there? Regime change or, as Donald Trump put it, the fight against ISIS or Daesh?
No, that's always been the excuse. They have to have an excuse that makes it look good. But I believe it is regime change. The U.S.-backed forces and the terrorist forces have been suffering many defeats in Syria lately. And it appears to me that the U.S. perspective has changed a little bit. And what they're trying to do now is to get some territory that they can hold on to. And it looks like the territory they really want is the territory where the oil is in Syria. And that might be their strategy now. And yet their long-term strategy has been for many decades and will be into the future regime change. If they can't do it immediately, that will still be part of their agenda.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Joe Lombardo, United National Anti-War Coalition, joining us there out of New York.